Close. I'm Stephen Hyder, and I'm with the head of the Roman Catholic Institute, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
It's interesting. People have asked me how the Institute ever came into existence, and I realized we really started in medias res by reading from the directories and telling people the beliefs, but I haven't asked you how the Institute came together in the first place. Where did you get the idea for the Institute? How long did it germinate before you were actually able to put it together?
Well, the idea came together in the mid 1980s when I was still with the what we call the Society of St. Pius V, which really it was just an informal organization, but there was this idea of having we did the statement of principles. I authored the draft of it. So that still is in circulation, I think. I mean, there were some changes made during.
You authored a draft in the 90s?
In the 80s.
In the 80s?
Yes. It was just a draft of a statement of principles. It was not very elaborate.
Okay.
And by 1990, I was out of that. By October of 1990, I quit the Society of St. Pius V. And then I realized that we had to do something to preserve unity. What plagues the traditional movement is lack of theological and disciplinary unity. And I said something's got to be done in order to accomplish that. So I gradually worked on a set of constitutions. I recently found some in my files, the early ones and all.
What were your inspirations for constructing them?
I had no inspirations.
You weren't looking at the Jesuit rules of Dominican.
No, I was not. Because really those things can't apply in our situation. This is something to. It's basically common sense. A great deal of it came from canon law, like the penal code. I just copied from canon law. If you do something wrong, you get in trouble. It imitated as far as for example, if you do something wrong, you come before a informal court of priests, and you're interrogated. You can defend yourself, etc. Instead of just getting kicked out because somebody doesn't like you. In other words, there has to be you have some sort of status and ability to defend yourself. You see, if there's something wrong. You see, those are abuses that we saw in the past. If you don't have a constitutions, then it becomes a type of cult. In other words, there's a big personality, and he becomes someone that can do whatever he pleases or thinks as time goes on, whether it's theological, whether it's disciplinary, liturgical, whatever he thinks is it. That's law, and that's not the way the Catholic Church works.
You can't just include a second Confiteor because you prefer it, and it's not in the missal.
No, correct. So we wanted to avoid the excesses of, say, certain organizations.
Well, I was going to say this clear. I mean, you wrote it in the 80s. There was a reaction to you coming from an organization which, to give them some defense, had not taken the time to put this together. It was hey, let's get some priests. In the seminary, yes. They didn't really think through.
For example, it was organized as what is known as a Pious Union in canon law, which is a very, very low-grade organization in canon law. And it was approved by the Bishop of Fribourg.
I think Father Cicada called it the Sacred Heart Auto League
level.
It's
about that's it. Or Rosary Society, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think he even said Rosary Society is higher than that. Or confraternity is higher than that.
So they didn't need the rules that would apply.
They were very vague. I remember them. Then it got suppressed in 1975. The thing was suppressed by Paul VI. And then we got in the mail a set of two new constitutions where it was elevated to a congregation of priests without vows, which is another canonical thing. How you go from getting suppressed by the person you say whom is the Roman pontiff to an upgrade in canonical status was never explained. You see, that's what I mean by this off-the-cuff, dictatorial, almost cultic way of doing things. See, we cannot alter the constitutions without a vote of the members, etc. And the thing is set, and even the powers of the superior general are all defined, and the powers of the lower superiors are all defined, what they can do, what they can't do. You see, so it's not an arbitrary thing. So when you join it, you know exactly how someone's going to treat you in this organization. Whereas you could, if you fell into if Archbishop Lefebvre went right and you went left, then you were out, and vice versa. If he went right and if he went left and you went right, you were out. There was people who were in favor in the late 1970s when he was against Paul VI were kicked out a few years later after he got the bear hug from John Paul II.
Seminarians and seminary professors.
Yes, it was, it was like and the only ones that survived were the ones that shifted with him. You see, and that is cultic. You see, it's...
You have an article about this?
Yes, I wrote an article. It's the personality, you see. And the Catholic Church does not operate on personalities. It is a very objective organization. It has laws. And so the constitutions that I wrote, after much thought, a lot of it was false starts, and
right. So first drafts in the 80s, and then you started more in the 90s. But the institute wasn't founded until
I think 2016 or something like that.
So another 20 years of germination.
Well, there were more priests coming through. You see, so I saw the need for it. You see,
So what made it 2016? You were finally able to do it, not 2011, not 2020.
I think it was the fact that there were more priests and priests coming up. And something needed to be done in order to organize and solidify both the daily life and the ideas and practices of our apostolate.
I think one of the things that has been underlined to me by a story you told is that the rules don't mean anything if they're not enforced.
Right.
And you very famously were not informed of an ordination mass because the rule had said you needed unanimous approval of the clergy. And so their way around it was, well, we're just not going to tell Father Sanborn, and we can still get unanimous consent of the clergy.
Yes.
So the rules only make sense if they're enforced with the Spirit, and there's not an exception made or sort of sneaky maneuver made in order to get something done that wouldn't pass in the rules.
Right.
Coming from that experience, were you able to craft rules that couldn't be circumvented in that way?
Yes, well, it's very explicit. I mean, again, a rule is only as good as its enforcement. I mean, any superior general can fudge the rules if you want, but I think that the bad experience that I've had in the past would urge me, obviously, not to in any way disobey the rules that are set down.
Well, you alluded to bad experiences, and that was something I think Bishop Dolan and to an extent Father Cicada had dealt with. They'd had the Cistercians, Novus Ordo, SSPX, SSPV, and I think Bishop Dolan had said, "Okay, that's it. I'm done with organizations, or I'm done with rules." And in one sense, I understand personally where he's coming from, but ultimately, if you don't have some kind of statement of principles, you're setting yourself up for a future problem. As you alluded to, there are more priests coming through, different personalities. The rules provide a catchment, a place for you to deal with those personalities, to deal with those disagreements that you might say, yes, I don't want to be part of an organization. It's a problem. But it will be a problem, I think, if you are not in part of an organization.
Yes, it's potentially a problem. We have theological rules, we have disciplinary rules, liturgical rules, and that everything is very, very defined, so that we really we don't have any factions in our society. There's not liberals and conservatives. We haven't had any disputes. I can't remember having any disputes with anybody.
There's not a Bishop Sanborn wing and a Bishop Selway wing.
No, not at all. No, everything functions very nicely. And there's really no nasty discussions or anything like that. It's all very calm.
Do you think that the time has passed? Obviously, we had the Wild West of the Orthodox Catholic Roman priest movement and masses in garages and independent priests. And do you feel like that era is now coming to an end and people are part of organizations, most likely, or they're part of some strange, strange independent group that no one knows about? Do you think that that time has passed? They're not really anybody.
Yes, it's quite different. I mean, I was ordained 48 and one half years ago. And yes, it was the Wild West, you might say, when we came over from a cone and just sang Mass in a garage, Father Kelly's brother's garage. And Holiday Inns were the standard fare. We had no churches, you know. So, yeah, it was, but uh, the Archbishop of Lefebvre had such a strong influence at the time that there were not really many controversies. You know, you just say, well, if the Archbishop wants this, that's fine, you know. But then the controversy started to develop as he moved around theologically. And so that's what caused the 1983 break with them. And then then controversies, then Father Kelly, about what bishops we were going to accept or not. That then broke up the Society of St. Pius V, and so I saw that there had to be a way to fix this and to standardize the way we're going to deal with theological questions, etc. And so that's the we're in a much different situation. I think the lay people feel more secure with an organization than priests that are just floating.
Well, I think also because they can read the rules themselves, so it's not
Yes.
some mystery. It's not in
Yes.
a box hidden somewhere.
Yes.
I do think if people go back to the 1983 letter, which was written by Bishop Kelly mostly, the letter of the nine.
I can't remember, frankly. That's a long time ago. What is that, 40 years ago?
Some time ago, you're
Gosh, I forget who wrote it.
But I think if people haven't read it before, they can go back and look and see, here are examples of why you need to have principles in place. Because if there had been, this wouldn't have come up. If their principles had been in place about how do we treat Novus Ordo clerics, there wouldn't have had to be a discussion that the Northeast District is rigorist and they think this way. Or if the rules had been followed about the exception that had been made for America about the Pius X rubrics, there wouldn't have needed to be an intervention. Says, well, I've changed my mind. Even though this was agreed to, I changed my mind. We'll say, no, you can't do that because this was what was agreed to. So I feel like that is the charter, in a way, some might say, one of the inspirational documents for the Institute, because it showed that if you don't have rules, principles in place, how can you collaborate, even for a short amount of time?
There will be inevitably disputes and breakups. So I think the lay people feel more secure that the clergy are all in agreement on all of these essential things and even non-essential things. We just agree. So I think they feel more secure, and that's one of the reasons why I founded it.
Well, and to close with how you open, talking about the fact that the traditional movement suffers from lack of unity, sometimes people lament that, well, the Institute doesn't get along with such and such a group or with such and such a priest, etc. And they think that that's your job to make sure that there's unity in that sense. And I would point out that's external unity. Your job is to make sure that the priests that you work with operate from an internal sense of unity, but you can't control the reactions and the positions that other priests take because you don't have the authority to tell them.
The Pope is the principle of unity of the Catholic Church, and the reason why the Catholic Church has unity is because of the Pope, and everyone obeys the Pope. I am not the Pope. So there's no possible way that you're going to see a unity of action and of theological position among traditionalist priests until there's a Pope. But you have to understand, too, that, there is a Catholic unity, I would say, in the sense that everyone means well. And even though we would say some are mistaken and they would say we're mistaken, et cetera, about certain things, nonetheless, they profess the Catholic faith. They mean well, and they have no intention to contradict the Catholic faith or Catholic practice. I think people should see beyond the disputes and say, well, these are all Catholic people who are just disagreeing about certain things that are important, but nonetheless do not affect their faith or our faith.
I also think
Also, I would say this, that good fences make good neighbors. In other words, it's not absolutely necessary that I be in perfect, how would you say, in a perfect relationship with another group. We're all doing our job. We have all spheres of our own work and apostolate. You know, if I were to meet one in an airport, I'd be very nice to him and say, "How are you doing?" Even if we disagree about things. I would not shun him or be nasty to him. It's just that he has his world, we have ours.
Yeah.
And that,
I'm remembering some of the priests from a certain congregation greeting Bishop Dolan as Bishop Dolan, even though they were part of a congregation in which he was Father Dolan, I think.
well, no, you're talking about the Society of St. Pius V. They were calling me, I went to someone's funeral there. They were calling me Father Sanborn. They were told to call me Father Sanborn. But they were calling then Father Selway Father. And if I'm just Father, that means he's nothing.
Right.
See, they were calling him Father.
Sometimes ideology can trump logic, I
Yes.
suppose.
So, whatever. I was just there for the funeral. I didn't care that much.
I think there's an ahistorical sentiment among laity to think, oh, well, if the Pope were around, everybody would be at peace. And they're not familiar with the fact that the Pope had to tell the Jesuits and Dominicans to stop calling each other heretics.
Yes.
This was when there was a Pope, and this is when the Jesuits were in the full flower of what they were doing for the church. And so please don't have the impression that if there were a Pope, everyone would get along. Saints didn't get along. St. Paul didn't get along with everybody. That's okay.
Garrigou-Lagrange said that he was appointed to some sort of committee for a dogma. I think it might have been the Assumption, whatever it was. But he said, I sat there at the table with a whole bunch of priests from the Society of Jesus, and I had spent most of my life attacking all of their ideas, but yet we got along very nicely. And he did. Oh, he attacked them terribly.
Right.
He said that their theory on grace leads to atheism.
To put it lightly.
Yeah,
So it's okay that we don't agree on everything, or even that sometimes there's strong conflict. The point is, as you say, we're Catholic, and don't assume the worst of others. It's a difficult time and people are trying.
Yes, they should see beyond it a little bit, and not that we're not going to reproduce the church. We are not the church in that sense. We are an emergency situation, as Bishop Dolan said perfectly. We are stable in a storm, and you're not going to see the unity and functioning of the church that you saw before Vatican II. That will only come with a true pope on the throne. So they have to have a certain patience and a certain ease about some of these disputes, etc., and not get too upset about it.
Well, I like that image that you shared, because a stable is something small, it's not large, and a storm blocks out your view of things that are just on the other side of the horizon.
Yes.
So you can't see what's coming.
Stables don't smell very good either.
That's no reflection of the seminary listeners and watchers.
Well, what I mean is that there are problems in the stable.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing how the Institute came together in your mind and then eventually in reality, Your Excellency, and long may it continue. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.